I'm going to work a bit more on this painting. If you haven't seen part one, please check my YouTube channel. I realized that there were some areas here that were not completely correct. This particular tree, and I'm making a dark purple with alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. There was another sort of a branch of this tree that was coming all the way here, and some of these leaves are corresponding to that branch. Branches of the trees are always wider in the bottom, and they get slightly lighter as you go to the top. This reflection of the bridge was actually larger than I had it before, and I think it just didn't make much sense when I saw the way that I had thought I had finished the painting before. So if you have not seen part one, you might want to see how I developed this whole painting. And this part two, I think it's going to be nice for you to see how some of these mistakes can be fixed. Once you see, when you see the result, you can fix it. So for the water, vertical strokes for reflections, which always should be darker than what they are reflecting. And this bridge is getting the light from behind. So the bridge itself should be dark enough. And I did only put one layer of dark area here. I think I need to reestablish that dark. Again, this is a purple that I make with alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue in my palette. What I do is I have the alizarin crimson on one side, the ultramarine blue on the other, and I mix it. And I can take the dark pile either with more reddish or more blue, depending on which kind of purple I want to establish. For this particular area in the dark area of the bridge, I want it to be sort of a middle real purple with almost half and half. But for some areas like in the water, I like to have a little bit of a reddish reflection. It's my sort of my preference, my taste. You can do whatever color you prefer, but don't, it's always good not to have exactly the same color. If you are not mixing your purple and you are using an already made purple, that should be fine too. You probably have an option of something that's more violet with more blue or more purple with more red. You can choose, or if you only have one, go ahead and use it. It's gonna look okay. It's your painting. So I thought this had not been dark enough to establish that difference in the shades. And again, this was the darkest area, which is fine. Should be very dark. I did not want, as you probably, if you want to go see part one, you haven't seen it, I don't want to make sure that it's very clear where the water begins and where the dark area beneath the bridge ends. And I liked that impression. In here, I am going to be making a bit more of a nondescript going down. And as you can see, it's a very light, dark brushing that is sort of on top of what I had before of the light area of the water. We will be reestablishing some lights, but this was actually a darker area, and I had it way too bright. It didn't make much sense. Now I hope that it will make a bit more sense. And it's because this tree was closer to the reflection. So these tree trunks were actually covering a bit of the reflection, and I didn't do that. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to invent another tree. This tree exists in my painting. It doesn't exist in real life, but you can do that. You can plant trees that actually are already grown trees in your paintings. Nobody's going to argue with that. So this tree is going to come this way, and that actually there was like, it was, these trees have a lot of skinny trunks, and these trunks were sort of all over this particular reflection that I had in the back. So reestablishing the dark area of the tree. In this particular case, I think I had it way too purple, like I had from the beginning. So I'm adding a bit more of the red, and some of these areas are going to be in shadow, but some of them are catching light. And for the effect of the light catching of these branches, having a dark area nearby is really, it sort of pops the light area that's going to be catching the light. So these were actually sort of very woody, and that's fine. I didn't have that before, and I think it just made this particular area a bit weird. I hope this is going to be working for you too, and you're not getting frustrated with my part 1 and then part 2. More red. I am introducing a bit of the Indian yellow to that reddish color to make it a bit more brown, because in some of these areas of the tree trunks, in this one here, I could, even though it's still dark, I can still make up that this is a tree, and the light, dappled light that was coming through is going to be showing a bit better, I think, by reestablishing this particular tree trunk. Red and yellow are warmer colors, and they sort of bring things farther closer to us. So even though I'm painting on dark area, on a pre-established dark area, I believe you can see the now more definition. These are trunks. I don't want to make them very, very clearly like, trees. It's just with the shapes that I have here, it will start making, I think, more sense. So there were some dark areas here that I need to reestablish because I had left them quite light. I think what happened is I realized that I had reached the 1 hour. This was yet another challenging painting. Please go see my other paintings in YouTube that I have available if you enjoyed it. I am showing you every single stroke. Good thing about YouTube is that you can fast forward. You can actually make this whole video, you can play it faster. I don't speak very, very fast, so you can speed up and you could still understand what I'm saying and follow what I am doing. So I am just reestablishing now some of the dark areas, the tree trunks, and this is the same purple color. So I've been using the dark. As you can see, I use darks at the beginning to establish the transparency of the colors, and in some areas I have left some of that transparency. But in some areas I start using the layers and layers of color, especially to make it either darker or more opaque. So now I think this is probably, at least it looks more similar to what the photo is showing. I'm going to introduce a little bit of a purplish sort of color, a little, to make it lighter, not too light, because this whole area of the water in the photo and in real life actually was darker because it's on the shadow of the bridge. And although I want to keep some of the impression of sometimes light peeking through, this didn't read very well. So I am going to use more of the clear blue. It's ultramarine blue, and really dare putting it on the top here. This was definitely an area where it was darker than I had it. Now acrylic paints dry dark, and I waited just a bit before I continued this painting just to see how darker my lights were showing, and I realized that in this area it was way too light. This is an 8x10 canvas. It's a rather small canvas for what I am used to painting. And it's a rather small area in centimeters, in, you know, measure. It's a small area of canvas where you have the transition from the dark to the light. That's why if you see the first part, I did explain in the area of the sky, I didn't have that much gradation. It's normally lighter closer to the horizon and more blue closer to the top, but it's a small painting. And that's why I didn't have that much, although I did have a change. So what I'm doing now is that same blue, I just added some white. I think I need to add a bit more of the white to that blue, just to come here on top, and that looks bad. So what I'm gonna do, because that didn't look actually very blue, and this is a river water, which is actually nice and clean. It's the Charles River. So let's wipe the excess color. I think it's because I had the alizarin crimson with the purple, so it wasn't really looking very blue. And the water, it's more blue-green rather than blue-violet. So after I take away the excess paint, I dunk the brush in water and I really push it down so that I can clean the brush as much as I can. This came out really very clean, so take your time cleaning your brush. I am going to use a little bit of Viridian green with yellow, and that I am going to add to the blue mix that I had. This will make more of a turquoise color, and that's mimicking more of the nice blue color of the river. Yes, I think that's much better rather than the purplish, dirty purplish color that I had. And just to make the idea of running water, it's good to go horizontal and don't blend all of the colors. Some of this should be showing as, you know, water. And in reality, in the photo that I have, I did not actually see exactly where this shadow ended, and because the tree is in front. So I think this is probably going to read better. Sometimes don't try to just paint what you see. Don't try to interpret or make your own sort of interpretation of what should be there. The other thing I see that I did not follow what I was seeing is that this area of the water was darker and the area of the water that was shinier was closer to this reflection. So in this area of the water, I just used the darker pile that had that little bit of turquoise color in it. Sometimes you do too much of the green and it does look very, very green. And it depends on what you are painting. It might work actually fine to have more green. But the important thing is just change some of these colors of your water and just brush it gently. Now I'm going to add a lot more white. It was a brighter color in here, definitely. So in here the water was getting probably more light from the sunlight, and it's just to that turquoise color I am adding the white. So these areas in here were getting a little bit more bright areas of waves with, there we go, a little bit more waves with light color. Now the other thing is this area of the reflection in the water, I think it's too yellow. It's a stone, and it should be a little bit less. I'm just going to try to blend here a little bit so it's not so sharp, but that's fine. It's small painting, so the difference in the color should be seeing through. And here, like I said, it's sort of, I don't really understand very well where the shadow ends and when it starts. So maybe just making a bit more waves. As you go in the back, there's less definition on the waves, and that should be the case. So this now I think looks a bit better in terms of the water reflection and the way this should be. Now what I'm going to be working on is this color of yellow. It's I don't think it's working well with the rest of the painting. So what I'm going to do is darken this first, and then when it dries we'll put some areas of color. But now that I have this mix, I think we should be using it with a bit of the cadmium yellow and that blue with different areas of dark for some of other tree leaves coming here. So there were some leaves coming behind this tree, and as you can see I put the straight line because this is a tree trunk, and these leaves were coming right behind this tree trunk, probably belonging to that tree. And I did not do that, so that definition was not very clear. And this is okay that you do it not defining very well the shapes of each leaf. I mean, it's your painting, so you can do whatever you want, but I like to leave it more impression. I added a bit of Indian yellow, and I'm going to be doing the same here. So it's just sort of painting the tree trunk with these leaves, and then I'm going to make sure that they were catching a lot of light. So some of these had like very bright light coming from behind, and I had missed those bright areas in the painting, and I think that's why the painting did not look correct to me when I thought I had finished in the previous video. So if you want to watch how this was developed, please go ahead and find that one. Don't put too much. It's just a few strokes where the light was brighter. Again, cadmium yellow on top of that green that I have. There were some leaves that were also catching a lot of light here. I mean, you can choose, but if you put these light areas right on top of the dark, and as you can see, it's just very, very light, the ones on top of the dark are going to show better the impression of light than the ones that I'm painting on top of the darker areas. Now, don't make all of them the same size or the same shape or the same direction. So it's just a few of them to indicate where is the light coming from. And this was definitely in the photo. It's the brightest area just behind that tree. And I'm just doing them as I told you not to do them all the same size. That should not, it doesn't work very well. Okay, so these were a bunch of areas with light coming through. Now this is going on top, and then these were greener. This green is too dull, so to make them greener, again, the cadmium yellow works better than the Indian yellow for making these leaves sort of read more green, because the Indian yellow has a hint of red, I believe. I like it. It's a transparent color, and it has a lot of value when I start my paintings. But for areas where there's more light, definitely here, for instance, that's probably better to use the cadmium. And because I'm using it on top of the green, it does look yellow, but it's sort of mixing with the green, at least visually. If your paint already dried and you want to continue working on it, don't worry, because it's going to be visual mixing. That's what we call visual mixing. I think this is now reading better. I just need to put some light areas where these trees are getting hit with the light. And this was too pink. I think it should have been more, these sort of dappled lights, they are too pink. So clean the brush. Don't get in the water. I have two buckets, one for the cleaning when the brush has darker paint and one for the lighter for when I introduce white. Okay, this came out pretty clean, so I can continue using it. And what I'm going to do is sort of an orange color with alizarin crimson and Indian yellow and white. And that sort of salmon color, I call. That salmon color is the one that I probably think it's better for the tree. Now, I think this is maybe too light. So let's put a little bit more of the alizarin crimson to that mix. Oh, again, I'm gonna end up having pink. And I told you, I do not like to have it so pink. So what am I doing? Do you know? I don't know. Okay, more yellow. And what I did is just grab a lot of yellow, and with what I had in my brush, that's what I'm gonna try to start with. I think this is going to be, yeah, it's less pink, as you can see, and it's some areas where the tree trunks are getting light. Now, because I'm painting sort of transparent base colors, which are alizarin crimson and Indian yellow, even though there's white in there, they are still transparent colors, and you can see a little bit of the violet in the back. Sometimes that effect is good because it just gives the impression of visually things are not necessarily hard edges, we call, when they are lit with from the sunlight. So it's good that sometimes there's some transparency. And definitely there was some light sort of trickling on this particular edge of this trunk. So there were two trunks here. For the other trunks, I'm very stubborn and using still the same large brush. I probably should change brushes. If I mess up, then I will change brushes. This here definitely had a bit more light. And then in these ones, there is light in some of these areas. Some of them are in the shadow of the leaves, but some of them have the light, it's hitting those trunks. And it's hitting the trunks on the right side of the trunk. So there was a very bright area here, and then here. I mean, very bright. You're probably thinking, that's not really very bright. Very bright would be like, you know, really cadmium yellow. But some of these are in the back, and some of them are getting, you know, dappled light. So here, I think I need to also check some of these tree trunks. Okay. So these ones here were getting light. And some of these would continue here. So as you can see, it's just painting sort of branches by just touching and lifting, touching and lifting. So it's not a straight line, it's just touching, letting the paint go and lifting. And in here there were some too. I think this might be starting to read better, probably work a bit on this area. So this tree trunk needs a bit of explanation there. Because I have this, I told you I wanted to work on the bridge, and I want to make it a bit, in this case, a bit more orangey. So I am adding alizarin crimson to that mix of Indian yellow and white. And I think it's a bit too dark, and you know, acrylics dry darker. So I'm just doing this, bringing it to the bottom, and I will be fixing the reflections also. Reflections go down. And it's interesting because the reflection was not as big as I had painted it. So I may need to do more blue in this area. Okay, that's as much as I want to go with this color. Probably, yeah. Because what I want to do now is to bring the lighter color on top. And to do that, I'm going to use more white, and I'm going to mix it with that salmon color that I had created, which was alizarin crimson and the Indian yellow. I think before I introduced cadmium yellow, so if you watch my first part, you might actually check. I don't remember, but I want to use this kind of color, which is a light yellow, on top of this area, and just go like this. These are like stone slabs. I don't want to, you know, describe with detail what kind of material is this bridge or reflecting, but at least I wanted to show that it is a structure that is man-made. And then what is the reflection? All right. So now I'm gonna clean here, and now I'm gonna come back with the brightest of this yellow color or yellowish color. Introduce just a tiny bit of that cadmium yellow to the salmony clear color that I had, and I'm just going to use it here in the corner of that area, which is where it was getting a little bit of a brighter, and it actually things look brighter if you put them by areas of dark. So it's not really looking as bright as I wanted. So I may need to darken the other area, or I can move on. Sometimes when you have a challenging area, just move on with the painting, establish some of the other light areas catching light. Now that I have this light color, other areas that are catching the light, and move on, and then go back to your trouble area. Don't dwell trying to get all of it at one go, especially if you're struggling like me in making this work. Okay, and you know, it may actually work out fine. There is an area that I wanted to work on, and I'm not cleaning the brush completely because it's one of the light areas. I'm going to use some of the mixtures that I have. I want a dirty gray, because in here what we are seeing is the back, I think it was not reading very well. So I'm sort of painting around the tree trunk. I'm doing some of these, what we call the negative painting, establishing some of those sort of buildings that are in the back. The back of the bridge is probably too dark, and I need to make it a bit lighter because things, as they go farther, they get lighter. It's the atmospheric perspective. I am not using any kind of media or medium, I don't know how you call it. I'm not using any kind of medium with these acrylic paints. It's just paint and water. Now you can use, you can dilute it more with water if you want to. I did not want to. I just want to do that dry brush on top. That probably made the end of the bridge go a bit farther away, and I'm seeing here I need to establish some waves at least. I think the change in the color was probably a bit too dramatic there, and it sort of was weird. Okay. Now, because I made that sort of strange, I'm just gonna reestablish a bit of the light. And as you see, painting is just, you know, different rounds of getting light, getting dark, getting light again, correcting, especially for acrylic and oil painting, you can fix a lot of things. There's blue here, and I just think I made that area of that tree trunk, I think it was a blob that should have been blue, seeing through that space between the tree trunks. And now, without cleaning the brush completely, I'm just gonna go back to the purple I had, add a bit more of the Indian yellow to the pile where I have it a bit more alizarin crimson-y. So I get a dark color, but it's not as purple, and you will see here, see, it's not as purple. Maybe a bit more of the alizarin crimson with this mix. So my brush has the salmon color, salmon-y color that I call. So it's not completely dark, but I think this tree needs a bit more of that definition of color, not necessarily just two colors. This is a small painting I've mentioned, so I don't want to have too much details in terms of describing every single piece of wood, but I think that in this case it does need, especially the areas that are closer to us, I think they benefit from having a bit more of a definition. So I'm putting my brush in the salmon-y color I had created with the violet, and it's sort of a dark area, but not as dark as the violet that I had here before, and it's just brushing slightly on the left, so from right to left, where this is getting the light, just to establish that there's a tree trunk in there, and there's another tree trunk here. So same sort of dirty brownish color, and same thing here. We get some area of the tree trunk that is getting some light. Some of it was getting a lot more light. Interestingly, here in the bottom, there were some areas with more light, and some of them are a bit darker, and this tree trunk needs to make sense. There was another tree trunk in the back there. Again, not a very specific description of this tree, but I think it is important to make some notes of color so that we know what's closer to us. And for the trees, one of the recommendations of people is that you paint the tree trunks with horizontal strokes. It allows you to create this sensation of the form, and that this tree trunk is round. So there's one tree trunk in front of the other. I don't know if they had like the same root, but it was one in front of the other, which is what I'm trying to convey here, that we see the two tree trunks very close by, but one's here and the other one is there. So there's two of them. I don't want to express a lot of detail, as I mentioned. I think this painting now looks better. I think that some of these areas were a bit brighter. So the last touches are going to be using the same bright color I had there. In some specific areas, what I do is I squint when I'm seeing the original photo, where is the lightest light, and I did not even clean the brush, so that's fine because it just mixes with the rest. There were some areas definitely here of bright color, and it's not super bright, but it is brighter than the surrounding, and it does provide a good sense of the light that was just coming through and hitting those areas. I'm just saying areas. Sometimes if I don't conceptualize what I am painting, but I just say which area is light and which area is dark, at the end I get my brain will form the impression of what I am painting, even if I did not conceptualize that I was painting a tree or that I was painting the light of the tree. So I'm going to just wipe this clean and clean it. I think I did mention that maybe making a bit darker this area would help. I don't know. I think I like it that way. So what I am going to just do now a little bit, I still have some blue piles that are not very dirty on my palette, because I think this particular reflection, as I mentioned, was too low as compared to what the reflection was, and this is the level of the water, so it's always sometimes very nice touch to have, you know, a little line of the blue there that indicates that's actually water, and just making sure that I get this. I'm just mixing basically all of the blues that I had. I don't have a specific thought for which kind of blue I want here. It was a bit dark in the original photo, but I don't know if it's gonna work painting it that dark rather than leaving it with the kind of mix of the blue that I have. Yeah, I think, yeah, the photo did have a sort of a light area here, but then this area was a bit darker, and this is all water, so just brushing it on top. We can go on top with some hints of light shining. By doing that, when I did work vertical, I sort of create the shape of the grasses by painting the water, which is what I want. I don't want, you know, a straight line there. Now we're going to introduce just a little bit of the white, not very well mixed, for these shiny areas in here of the water coming through. And where else did I see that brighter area of water? It was, well, that's actually the lightest area that I see in the water, maybe a little bit in here, but sometimes we take the pictures without, you know, because we're liking it. But the point is, for a painting, you don't want to have something that's catching the eye and your attention way by the edge of the canvas. Well, I mean, you can do whatever you want, it's your painting, but the idea is you want to bring the eye to the whole canvas and not just direct the eye somewhere else. This is looking better than before, and I am still not sure if I want to have like a big bright color in there or if that is enough. But definitely what we did in this second part was add these three trunks because they were on top of this reflection. This reflection had been wrong, it was too small. There was a lot more blue of the water here, which was wrong. We need to make sense of what's the reflection, but we also have the shadow of this bridge. And so because we have the shadow of the bridge, this water was darker than what I had originally painted. The brightest area was right here, just before it reaches the area of the reflection of the bridge. And this was one of the darkest areas. So the two areas of the darker areas are under the bridge and under these, the street that's by the bridge. I think that by adding the cadmium yellows on these branches has helped. And I want to leave this as the original, very light wash, same as here, not very well defined. The only thing that I'm seeing, you probably are saying, stop, what are you doing now? Is that I think I made this too light, even though I did see some reflections in there. I think this benefits from having this dark. In your painting, if you don't want to put this particular branch that's broken, because it may be providing a bit more of the challenge of painting the water, feel free. It does help to have the branches and the see-through for the light. And I do like the way that I was seeing those leaves coming down. So that's it for now. I think this is painting now. It's better. I think it is finished. And of course, the moment I say that, I see something that I want to fix a little bit. I just made alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, because I think here, under the lightest areas, there's benefit in creating the shapes to have the shadow of these leaves established, and it just having just a blur of light doesn't help, but adding the darker area under is very helpful for explaining the form and giving some volume to those grasses. And I think this will bring the eye, the idea that there was light, but most of this was in shadow. It's just a few grasses that were in the light. And I think before it was too much light. It's good to have that blue because it does bring some harmony with the rest of the bluish colors in there. Now, what I am just going to reestablish a little bit is just a few dabs of cadmium yellow with the dirty brush that I had, just to make sure that, you know, this border had like a line of light that was coming in the back, and just by establishing those lights by the darker accents, it just pops the light better, the impression of light that we are seeing here from these areas. All right, and I think we can call this painting or this study finished and done. I hope you enjoy watching. If you didn't see the first part, I invite you to watch it and watch some of my other videos in my YouTube channel. Have a happy painting. Thank you.